All for joining us. We had concluded a series of people, process, and technology, and now we get to focus on a little bit of a different topic, something that I think we stumbled on across an interesting conversation with several people in the industry. You always hear the same thing every once in a while, and that is why me? What are these people? What are these people after? What are we talking about? We're talking about the bad actors, the hackers, those people that are trying to make their life miserable in their environment. And Angelo, when you deal with clients that had probably some hacking event after their environment or their networks, or somebody's trying to probe them in their environment and trying to see if there's a door or window that needs to be rattled or opened, they're like, why am I a blip on the hacker's radar? Well, who are these hackers, right?
Well, first off, let's start with, if you're gaining access to anybody's stuff, whether it's their car, like physically, their home, their computer, the bank accounts, whatever, and you're doing it without knowledge or consent of the individual, and you have no governmental authority behind you, from the point of view of your government,
Thank you.
You are a criminal committing a criminal act,
right?
Whether doing it as a individual or as a group, a gang, or a nation state. Nation state being that other government saying, "Oh, go hack into this company's data and try to exfiltrate whatever," or something along those lines. In the end of this entire thing, you're looking at people who are committing crimes,
right,
for their country or for their own nation, on themselves. But back to motivations, that's where it derives.
So let's kind of clarify for our podcast listeners, because there's some definitions that you probably want to know. So today's podcast, if you haven't guessed already, is really understanding who are these masked people behind the screen that you don't see that are causing angst. And I want to be very clear, because this may be a little old school in definition and stuff, but there's a big difference technically in definition between a hacker and a cracker. A hacker initially, in days of old lore, was the person that was looking to understand better a system, a process, or something.
Right.
A cracker was the actual person that was trying to understand those same devices, processes, or whatever, and actually break through them. But we in the movies and the industries have melted in the definition of hacker and cracker to be one and the same. And so by popular consent, we're using the word hacker as a person that's doing it for nefarious means to get through the system. So let's be clear on that definition. The second thing I think is very important is there's different types of hackers, right? There's a white hat hacker, a gray hat hacker, and a black hat hacker. And you're going, okay, so aside from the headwear that they wear, what's the difference? So Angelo, can you the three different types, right?
Yes. So let's start.
I want to define those, but then focus on one particular because they're the ones you don't know about.
Right. So let's start with the white hats. Let's start with them and say, hey, these are the people who you have authorized to do something for you, to check out your system, to check out this could be a physical act. This could be social engineering. I go to your offices and I talk to the person at the front desk and see if I can talk them into letting me in. Talk them into letting me into an area which I do not have access or authority to go into, to test the boundaries of your organization. The same thing can be applied electronically. And the same technologies or similar technologies and similar methodologies could be used to gain that access. But the reality is the white hat is just like the old westerns. They're the people who are doing good. They're the sheriff or the people who are trying to protect and keep them good.
So pause on that, because in white hat, you should hear that people are doing this. They're called ethical hackers.
Good.
These
Yeah,
are
another term.
these are commissioned by you to look at your environment. They use the same or similar techniques that a nefarious bad actor would, because you're asking them to test your network as if they were a bad actor. So they're familiar with this stuff. They've been authorized by you. They're doing it ethically, meaning that they're not intending to take down your systems or steal your data. They're looking from a hacker's perspective. What would I do if I was a bad hacker?
Mhm.
And try to give you the intelligence, the information to harden your systems, to improve your security and stuff. So these are the good guys, like you said, the sheriffs. Okay, so that's white hat.
Yep. So let's talk about the other spectrum, the
Okay.
black hats.
Okay.
These are the nefarious individuals, the people doing it for their own gain or malicious intention. These are the people with whom they are getting unauthorized access to systems and such, not for the purpose of illustrating an issue with the system and then telling the individual about it, not to, hey, show some type of problem with some type of piece of software or something along those lines. They're doing it to gain access to a back end for their own purposes or to create havoc and such. And we'll get into further motivations of black hats later, but they're the bad guys,
Right.
guys and girls.
They're not
Bad
asking
people.
permission. They're not asking your permission. They don't care about your environment except to exploit you somehow. Is that fair?
I would say that's fair.
Okay.
And then in turn, now we're left with you take black and gray and you smush it together with paint, and what do you get? You get black and white and you get gray.
Right.
Black and white paints, put them together, you get gray.
Right.
These gray hats, what do you think? They occupy that middle ground. They can kind of go either way. Some gray hats some gray hats actually try to penetrate stuff that they're not authorized to do.
Yeah.
And then end up telling the people in question that they did so. Technically what they did is illegal.
Yeah.
But then they have this, and then they end up, basically establishing that they have they did it for altruistic reasons or whatnot. The reality is, it's a dicey road to run.
That I think they call it grays because there's a legal gray area where you're treading because your foot is in both camps. You're kind of that double agent at that point. And it's like, arguably it could be for the highest bidder, or it could be because, hey, I did things illegally, but you know what? I'm somewhat of a good guy. I'm trying to redeem myself so I can sleep well at night. I'm going to tell you so that you pay me a bounty or something.
That's another thing. Again, most people do this for altruistic reasons, not for altruistic reasons, but for monetary reasons. Altruism is probably not a gray hat thought process, but it's definitely not a black hat thought process. To be frank, white hats can do stuff for monetary reasons as well. Let's not underline the fact that white hats exist to have a job and to get paid as well. So,
but they're coming at the approach. The white hat is coming from the approach that you've commissioned me. You know what I'm
totally agreed.
I'm sharing with you my approach, my technique, possibly the software and the process in which I have obtained that escalation in privilege or whatever, that access or whatever. And then I am also showing you how to fix it. Right. It kind of begs the question, if you remember your I guess it was Mad Magazine, if maybe they still have it. Remember Spy versus Spy?
Yes.
There was the white spy and then the black spy, and they were always blowing each other up and stuff. And I can't help but think there's a little Spy versus Spy. Probably put a little picture of that without copyright infringement. But you can probably say that in cybersecurity, there's a bit of that battle going on, isn't there?
Absolutely. If we get into more deep things in here. We start talking about how
Right.
we defend and test the defenses, red teams versus blue teams, purple teams. And you're talking about that's how internal functions figure out if they're vulnerable and
Right.
determine. This isn't the realm of a small business. This is big business hiring teams to do these things, or external groups doing it for the organization. But the reality in the end, what they're all trying to do is find, every one of them is trying to find and exploit a vulnerability. Their motivations post tense is where it comes into question, and whether they were authorized to do so. So
That's our next thing we want to share with the podcast so now that we've defined white hat, gray hat, black hat, right? Good all the way to the bad. Motivation comes into a big part of this.
Yep.
Why me? Right? Why are they after me? What is their motivation? Why did I just show up on their radar one day?
Yep.
And I think there's some categories we can get down into another deeper layer, which is maybe it is monetary. You've mentioned monetary, right? There's something of gain for them financially to be able to pull either from a data, selling back your data, such as like ransomware or something. There could be financial, hey, I'm helping you. I breached this. I've now going to sell you back this intellectual finding. So then you do whatever you want, but it's still for money.
Yep.
So money is
a big last.
What's that? Go ahead.
Financial gain, because they gained some type of intelligence or data, which is pertinent to some function or feature that you may be offering, presenting, patented, something along those lines to use and copy otherwhere or sell to someone whom could do that. Taking that data out and selling it to somebody of who may know. The classic thing, the spy movie. They hack into the central system of the CIA and they get all the knocks that are out there, no official cover spies in the Russian territory, and now it's all known, and they gather them all up and get that's kind of.
So they sell to the highest bidder, but then question then, so they sell to the highest bidder, right? And that's the spy list. You want the spy list, right? I'll sell to the highest bidder, but is it more lucrative to take that approach to sell to the highest bidder in some type of market, black market? Or is it more lucrative that they have something about you and they sell it back to you?
I think
hey, listen, a lot of them, but more toward the back end of it, because it's almost.
If I was a bad guy,
yeah,
I may try to do both. So,
yeah,
that's
we don't necessarily go to the black market each and every day for anything, so we don't normally see our stuff posted on there. But yeah,
these nice fruits.
That's two sources of income.
So let's take another thing, and this is actually important.
Okay.
And this goes back to paying the perpetrators, what we call bad actors.
Okay.
To gain back access to your system. When you pay them, it's similar to paying a terrorist, paying a kidnapper for what they did. You want something back, the person, something, not to do something, etc. You're paying them to not commit the act. Here's the issue. If you give them the money, will they stop committing the act? Or have you just created an income stream? And this is kind of happens all the time.
That's a very good point. There's no guarantee that they're going to honor their word. Right. And then the question then becomes, if they've exploited you once, what's to say they don't come back and exploit you a second time?
Yeah. I mean, you have a blackmailer. How many blackmailers say, just give me $5,000, and then you give them $5,000? I'm referring to movies. I've never been in a blackmail situation, so I can't really say that it's something that I would do. But let's assume you give them $5,000, you turn around, and you thought you were done with them, and they go, oh, I need another 10. Yeah. Now suddenly you're on the hook until you reach a point of, It's so much money. Is it really worth the cover that you need to keep? Yeah, is it really worth them not releasing the bad thing you did or whatnot? So
Right. And we actually had an interesting discussion in several podcasts before with Rickson, who does the data tokenization. And I can't help but think, when you try to ransom my data, I mean, my data is in the clear unless I tokenize it, right? Unless
yep,
it's it's scrambled that it
it
doesn't
looks real.
it looks real, but it's not because it's already scrambled through the tokenization, that it's just a meaningless amount of numbers or characters that substituted the actual data.
Yep.
In which case you can turn to the ransomer and go, you can keep it.
Yeah,
You
and
can
that's the
keep it
beauty of
because it
that.
means nothing to you. It's kind of like back in World War II, the Enigma machines, you have to have the right tumblers and the right day and the right sequence to be able to unscramble that. And if you don't,
Mhm.
you're going to see gobbledygook coming across, and it means nothing. You can't sell it. It's not a commodity and it's worthless. And if it's worthless, they don't want to deal with it.
I agree.
And so that brings down, so that's kind of the money train for bad actors today. And that's the
So
financial.
remember, we're talking bad actors, and
Right.
some bad actors
Yeah,
become bad actors because of what they did,
right.
and sometimes it comes down to a challenge. I'd like to see if I could do something.
That's our second motivation, right? And thank you for bringing that up, because this is one of those things where they're looking as a dare, as a trophy, as bragging rights,
Yep.
um,
Or as a probe.
as a probe. Right. You may not be the one that they're actually going after. You may be the test bed. You may be the springboard to
Hmm.
another target that they're actually going to, but you're a partner with them. You're somehow connected to their supply chain or whatever it is. And that's a valid vector that we've seen in 2023 being exploited
Yep.
by, and you would think it's, oh, well, their suppliers, it's a steel, it's a ductwork supplier from my air conditioning company. No, no, no. There were some health companies that had their law firms breached to be able to get to the insurance information. There were,
Well, you bring
there
up a
were
good point. Third party supply, the supply chain. People
right,
don't understand the people they share data with. They
yeah,
need to actually understand what they do with the data too.
right,
Your law firms, your accounting firms,
yeah,
your even your health insurers.
yeah.
Although they have separate requirements, you are sharing data with them.
This is tax season, right? And
Oh yeah.
um, one of the things that I always cringe, and maybe it's just me, but um, do your taxes for free online.
Hmm.
Now, I don't want to throw shade, as they say, on these companies. They may be legitimate because they do get their charge for filing. They get a filing fee for it.
Right.
So the software itself is free, but the filing costs you something. Okay. And there are some that are legitimate. They attest to their legitimacy and how they handle your private information. But the thought always crosses my mind is it really free? How does my data, it's going to be stored outside of my control, versus I'm filing through you, but it's already encrypted as I go through you to the federal government for filing.
Hmm.
Or that's a lot of private information that somebody can buy a house on, because your social security numbers on there, your home address, your income, your W-2s, everything is filed in your income tax.
Listen, if you don't have some type of, watcher service on
Yeah,
your stuff at this point,
yeah,
you need to go get. It's not an option anymore. Your
yeah.
stuff is being. It's not. You may be the most secret person,
Hmm.
but you share it with one person, a bank, a doctor, something. They have your information. It can get exploited you're not going to know about it until you know about it.
Right.
So,
Well,
but
so the motivation, and again, I pick on a little bit of that free stuff because nothing to me is ever free. That's just the way my mind is programmed. There's nothing
Facebook,
truly free.
it's so free, but what did they do with all your information?
Right. Okay. So now that you have your people that you share with and stuff, and your third parties that may be supplying you indirectly or something that you may not think is relevant. We're focusing on really are those people that are doing this for fun, for bragging rights, for trophies and stuff. And one thing I've noticed is, I used to monitor a little bit more the internet traffic as it goes on based on sensors that I had or honeypots and things that were out there. And I couldn't help but notice a spike, usually around, and this was when I was further up north, it was around June timeframe, May, June timeframe. And I correlate it with when schools were released. When schools were out, it seemed like those types of that type of traffic, that type of probing and everything seemed to just boom, go right up.
Yep.
And I couldn't help but think, where's the YMCA? Why aren't the kids being put in the YMCA dribbling a basketball instead of looking at my data? I think the times have come that this is some of the bragging rights that we're seeing.
Yep.
And those are because they're curious, because they're bored, whatever. But then there's the bragging rights when you look at bad actors, when they start comparing notes and are in nefarious places, right? That they're talking to.
Also, don't forget, but you're now not talking about bragging rights. You may be talking about more referential. Hey, this is my portfolio of work. This is what I can do. So,
but it's still, but there's still
brag
that's out there, right? I mean,
yeah,
for referential work, there is still of how many systems can I take over so that I can show you a good denial of service test bed, right?
how many botnets
My
can be
portfolio,
sold?
I can own 10,000 computers that people don't know about, right?
Yeah.
There's a bragging right to that, right? There's a swagger when they get into the deep recesses of the internet that they go, yeah, I got 10,000 nodes I can, or servers I can tip over and own. And how many do you need? I'll sell them to you. It's almost like time slicing.
Exactly what it is, basically.
This is kind of old mainframe days of how much processing. Well, you have to charge by CPU cycles, right? Now we're doing it by servers, by how many hosts you can own. And oh, you need 50 of them? Yeah, I can give you these for this amount of days, and just send me in a Bitcoin or some type of untraceable type
So
of exchange.
we
It's a
get
commodity.
those.
Yeah.
But also let's take into account ideological beliefs or activism or something like that.
And that's the third section, right? That's a third section that's important. Ideological.
People have their ideological thought process. I may be with PETA, and I may want to hack kill shelters or something like that, or puppy mills or some type of cattle, some to cause havoc and wreak a problem for the people whom I oppose.
Right.
These are people who do this. You don't know that you're a farmer and you have a computer to keep track of whatever. Honestly, families are farmers, but I really don't know what they would keep track of. But whatever, maybe amount of grain, how much they sold, etc.
Yeah.
But you don't know that someone wants to get access to your data because you live on a farm and you don't know anything that would be relevant to PETA. You're not putting these things together.
Yeah.
Again, this is just a straw man argument that you can put up anyone you want, but the reality is it is an idea that someone wants to cause your business harm, because they oppose what you do.
Right.
And that's the ideology, religious ideology.
Mm-hmm.
We've all heard about Iran, Israel, you know, and malware being thrown back and forth, etc.
Middle East
That's
is ripe with a lot of countermeasures and attacks electronically, right? But it spills over.
yeah.
In order to shut down, let's say, government X's computers, you have to have so many servers in your possession to be able to crash it.
Mhm.
Well, where do you get those servers? It may be that farmer that has, electronic, because they're trying to,
Yeah.
again, farmers, they're in a pickle too, right? And let's just bring it up. Farmers are not um simplistic, and they have a rake and a hoe, and that's all they have, and maybe one rusty tractor. The equipment that they have on their tractors are GPS coordinated. They have yields, they calculate the humidity levels all on board. They're digitized, right? You have crop dusting that is done with drones. You have GPS coordinates on there. You have those type of transmitters. All that's coordinated to a base, back to their desk, computerized, pulled in, to be able to maximize the yield so they can get that extra dollar to feed their family. Um,
Yeah.
it's dire if they don't make that number,
Yeah.
because that's a yearly salary they draw on to repair their equipment and everything else. So that may be the server that somebody takes over. They don't know what it is. It's just a server. It's just an IP number to them.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens to that farmer, for example? Their computer systems go down, they're out of production, and they have a finite window in which they can glean the seeds or their crops or their harvest or whatever it is. They only have a certain amount of time, and if their systems go down, that's catastrophic.
Absolutely. I mean,
Smaller
you can say
business,
that, to be
catastrophic.
frank,
I
you
mean,
can say it for a lot of business.
yeah, and this is just a farmer, right? And we, sometimes we think, oh, it's just that. It's just that. No, it's somebody's livelihood.
Well,
If
let's
that,
actually, we just saw this.
yeah,
What about what just happened with the healthcare industry? A healthcare payment processor went down,
mhm,
and I think they're still having a lot of ill effects because of this. They say it's going to take weeks or months to get back in operational, but it has cut income to these hospitals
yeah,
almost entirely. So think about that. You're a nurse, you do your job, but now you're not getting paid.
mhm.
How does that work?
And the
And
hospital,
I'm not arguing salary. Just
no, no,
I
no,
want
but
everybody to hear, not a salary
absolutely
argument.
100%. They have to feed their families too. It's nice to say you're doing this because it's your passion, but at the end of the day, it has to put food on the table for you, whatever your
Agreed.
vocation is. And when your vocation is being threatened, or your livelihood is being threatened, and you may be paycheck to paycheck, you may have a little nest egg. It erodes quickly when a company um, gets possessed by a bad actor.
Mhm.
Their systems are decimated, and um, and it takes time to get back into a reasonable operating posture.
Let me paint a picture for you in
Yeah.
this regard. Something that may look ethical or activism type and such like that. But what if you have one competing healthcare organization
Mhm.
who wants to buy this other one, utilizes this methodology to basically cause them to, they're basically crippling the one that they want to buy,
Right.
putting them in a position to be able to buy them at a much cheaper amount.
Well, and that becomes industrial espionage, which is the third
Boom.
type, right? And I think that's where you were going, is there are industries that go after each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I would, and the if you want to look at it in a curve, there's a complexity to this.
Mm-hmm.
On the XY axis, there's a complexity, and then there's the prevalence of something. The complexity would be these industrial espionage, right? They're more complex, more refined, harder to find. They leave no traces. It's very difficult to to be able to track them, to see where their footprints are, right? These are professional people that do this in a very sophisticated manner, and they take their time to be able to do this with no traces. Now,
Yep.
the clumsier ones are the ones that are just trying to get into the business, have been rattling doors and windows, and you're home and you're going, seriously, I see your face in the window. Please stop. Let's go away, right? Those are the easier ones to get rid of. They may be more prevalent, but they have a more benign. I don't want to call them. I don't want to call them ineffective, because if they have the right tools in the right sequence, they can be just as effective. They're bumbling through it, so they're
Right.
less refined. But
Yeah,
over but over the course of time, over the course of doing it, you start refining and honing your trade, if you will, and you start moving up in the X and Y coordinates as far as the complexity and the prevalence. The prevalence may becomes less, but then you start getting up into the complexity and the refinement of it. So okay, so we've done several. Let's see, we've done the three types, the fourth, the industrial espionage, but there's one last big one where we're seeing a lot because of war, because of probing, because of what we start talking about soft targets. This is governments. These are government sponsored, government
hmm
agencies that
Nation
are,
state,
what's that?
nation state entities.
Nation state entities. There you go. Nation state entities. And these are ones that are very sophisticated. They have a wealth of resources behind them as far as monetary sponsorship. They may or may not need to have some type of ransomware come back to them, although if it's a large enough target and it's an expensive enough target, nation states have been known to retrieve financial gain from that,
Yep.
but it's not a necessity. In many cases, it's to disrupt infrastructure, typically, disrupt political stability, and to disrupt the confidence of people in their governments.
And that's doubly so when it's some type of ideological nation state attack, because you now have two reasons that people attack.
And there you
They
go.
are, yeah, these are very, I mean, the problem with all of these in any question is the people in question are trying to, the people, the bad actors are trying to exploit a vulnerability in your
Mhm.
system, whether that vulnerability be a person
Right,
or a software issue or configuration issue. They're trying to exploit it. And
right,
in the end, people with deep pockets can afford to spend time building and seeing and probing to understand what's going on with that particular place they want to attack. And a
right.
nation state is probably the most dangerous, especially one, you take something like North Korea or something, who has dedicated teams who are there, focused on, attacking the their perceived bad people in the world, the people who are opposed to them, and on top of that, probably have some type of threat of harm on them themselves if they don't produce.
Yep,
Those two things create a motivation, or them or their family
right.
create motivations that make them do things that are, you know, maybe a little stretchy with regard to getting things done. But the reality is, you see the effectiveness. You put a gun at somebody's head, you can make them do stuff for a while. So that's kind of part and part of the point.
And
Um,
that, I think that's the point of this podcast, is not to be not to be crushing your spirits in this, but
yes,
if you understand the motivation, if you understand the basic types, and there's other pieces of these that have combinations or dual type of motivations, but suffice it to say, they'll fall into some of these categories that we've mentioned. I think to understand from that, from those rose-colored glasses, what they're looking at gives you a better appreciation to say, how do I protect myself against it? Right. And this is definitely not one of those things. If this is not your specialty, if this is not what you do as a career, as your vocation, um, get expert help, because depending on which bad actor is targeting you, depending on which industry you serve and what clients you serve, you may be over your head and over your head very quickly. And you may think you have the protection that you need. You may think you have the processes in place, but if it's not often checked, um, updated, because they do have to update, techniques change all the time, and made sure that you have a third party looking at this and going, you know what, you've done your due diligence here, but you're missing a total new vector, or let's build out and make your policies, make your procedures more contemporary to the threats that are out today. Um, this is one that you don't want to go alone. And you're seeing in the industry, I mean, Angelo is a great testament to this. How many times do you see third parties coming in to assess because we don't want to miss something?
Yeah, it's a double check. Hey, what's here? You have a myopic view to your environment.
Yeah,
You're looking at it and you're writing it and looking at it, and you're probably missing something because you haven't taken it and taken a step back from and taken a look at it as a whole.
yeah,
Other people can do that for you. Please remember that.
right. I mean, it really comes down to ensuring that you're relevant, your risk is minimized, if not removed, and reducing any dwell time if something happens. Case in point, what happens if something happens?
Hmm.
Do you have a plan for that? Today, you should. Your insurance carriers are asking for that. They want to see your plans. What happens if something happens? Something gets breached. If you don't have plans, and you have no expertise to design those, build those, and even test those, get in touch with expertise. Um, I'm picking on Angelo, but we have under Goliath Cyber Security, we have a group that specifically does that and works with customers that understand that I don't have the expertise in house. It's okay. You can't be an expert on everything. You've heard this. You heard the phrase "Jack of all trades, master of none." Well, here we have the masters of cybersecurity. We're here to help. So I do encourage people to use experts that they are comfortable with, that they trust, to be able to reduce the risk that is faced. These bad actors are not going to go away. These nation states are looking at this as something that they want to shut down, disrupt, and make sure that there's less confidence in whatever they're looking at. Protect yourself.
Listen, yeah, protect yourself. That's exactly right. Patch your systems. Make it so that you are protected. Do you go home to your house and not lock your car, not lock your front door? Do you
I
just
hope
leave them
not.
open?
I
Yeah,
hope not. Not anymore.
but
Not in this day and age.
yeah. So I know people walk down the street just jiggling car doors just to see if something's open. They can steal something inside.
Right.
You know, and that's happening in neighborhoods that never had that before.
Right.
And so the real question is, what do you do? And are you okay with somebody doing that to your business in a physical or in an electronic digital form? That's what they're doing. They're jiggling the car door or
Right.
handle. They're trying to see if it opens up. And if it does, they're going to look at what's inside. And if there's something good, what do you think they're going to do? Leave it there? Write you a note? So,
That's a good analogy. They're there to do it for money purposes, right? They want to sell something or get something out of your console that's all your change or whatever. Or worse, there's other assets that could potentially either cause harm or are worth something. So you got to protect yourself. And this is in the digital age that we're in.
yep.
This is what you have to do is understand who's trying to rattle your doors and windows and hopefully we've taken an opportunity to educate you on how to think like one, or at least appreciate where they're coming from to be able to protect yourself a little bit better. And at the end of it, we've done our job if we can help educate you. So
Got
Ed,
it.
any parting words on this? We don't want to
Yeah.
be gloom and doom, but I think it really comes down to understanding.
Listen,
Know thy enemy.
every once in a while, I post something on LinkedIn. It says patch, 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 and patch again. You know,
Right.
the reality is just keep up with the patches. Make sure that you have a good situational awareness.
Mhm.
And do you diagnose your own ailments or do you go to a doctor? Ask for help. Ask, you know, this is where you ask people who have more experience than you for help. And when you do that, they may actually have the same experience as you, but they may have a different perspective. Also consider that. That's also as important as having more experience. So the reality is those perspective changes or the greater knowledge of the subject can really help you out. But the end all be all to this thing is, I'm going to say my phrase.
Do it. It's time.
If you can't explain how you're secure, you can't explain your security stack, you can't explain what you do to be secure, you're probably not. It's probably more complicated than it needs to be, and you're probably not going to get to a secure place anytime soon. Therefore, and forthwith, complexity is the enemy of security.
There it is.
And Andrew.
And my thing has always been, I always try to use the best computer in the world, and that's our brains, right? If we're not using it, we're losing that skill set, we're losing that intelligence. So I always say the best security device rests between our ears if we use it. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Think through it, reason through it, understand it, like Angelo said. And if it's too complex to explain, you're not doing a good job of it. Time to reevaluate, right? So
Yep.
with that, we thank you for attending in our podcast for another episode, and hopefully we've shared a little bit about the mindset behind the bad actors out there, and give you a little bit more street savvy on what it is, how to deal with it. So until next time, thank you for attending, and don't forget to like and subscribe and give us your comments.
Click the button someplace,
Click the buttons.
wherever it is. Yeah.
All right. Thanks all, and have a great day. We'll talk to you next time.
See you guys.